Hey everybody, I'm sorry I'm late. YouTube, I'm sorry I'm late. Everybody, or YouTube kept saying, "Sorry, something went wrong," and I'm like, "No, I don't have time for this." So, yeah, so here I am. How's everybody doing tonight? Oh my word, we've been blowing up the chat here. Hey, DW is in the house tonight. Everybody say hi to my man DW. Appreciate you coming out tonight. Cool Hand Luke, there will be no unauthorized use of my mugshot. Thank you for that. Hey, Daryl. Audra's here. Hi, Teresa. Thanks for the cheesecake. Dave Jesson's in the house. Hey, Sherry Lau says hello to Dangerous Prayer Warriors. We're glad you're here. Hi, Gene and Daryl. Parker's here. Hi, Susan. Got some good produce at Kroger, huh, Gene? I might have to look into that. Watch The Shack this afternoon. I've never seen the movie. I read the book. Joyce, I got to tell you about reading the book The Shack. Let me tell you where I was at. I was in Guatemala when I read The Shack. I took it with me on a mission trip I was on down there. I was down there training firefighters. Actually, I was a fireman at the time. And I was down in Guatemala sitting on this beautiful deck in this hotel. And there was a hammock out there. And I laid in that hammock in the evenings and watched the sunset in Guatemala. And I was reading The Shack. I will never forget being there. It was the most beautiful place I've ever been in my life. Training these firefighters. And you want to talk about learning a lot about God in a setting like that? It's awesome. So it was a great time. And it was fun training those firefighters too. Those guys were really excited, teaching them how to kick indoors and how to keep houses from burning down and stuff. It was cool. It was a good time. One of the funnest things I ever did. So, Candy, Bob Sauer Mezami. I'm assuming that means good evening, my friends. I'm assuming that's what that is. Angie Myers in the house. Hi, Cheryl. Glad you're here, Jack. All right, good. Thanks for coming back, DW. Joe Sutton in the house. And Bonsoir, Mezami. Hey, Michelle Kirian. Hey, did y'all know that Michelle Kirian is my 7th favorite person on earth? Yeah. Oh, good news about Cheryl. She texted me earlier. Her son Ty. I don't know if you could say it's good news. Someone has kidney stones, but he doesn't have COVID-19, so that's cool. Good. And Cool Hand Luke announcing my arrival. Thank you for that. So, all right, good deal. So, I want to know. I'm jumping over to the website here real quick. Does everybody have a copy of the worksheet? Because we are going to talk about that tonight. And I'm going to put the link in the chat room here in just like 2 seconds when I get that far. Just some preliminary stuff about the worksheet. Everybody get that? Still working on that? All right, here's the link for y'all. You click on it there and get it. And I worked on mine this morning too. I only filled out like 3 of the lines, but you want to take your time with that. Because like I said last night, we're going to talk about a little more here in a bit. Some of those lines on that are going to come right out at you, and other ones you're going to have to work at, and that's the point. So to those of you who may not have been able to be with us last night, sorry, here, I'm adjusting my camera. For those of you who may not have been able to be with us last night, let me give a quick explanation of what that is. Talking about dangerous prayers last night in the reading from yesterday. Craig was talking about how there are certain things in life you have to feed and certain things in life you have to starve. And that really hit home to me. And I don't know, something about that just got to me. So I created that worksheet and yeah, Joe, it'll be a process and I'm anticipating that. In fact, we may not finish it. Obviously, we're going to finish this book this week. We may not finish it this week. Or finish the worksheet this week, that's fine. We're going to be working on this for a while because we want to be able to experience that. And we have to be careful about how we make allowances. Because in making allowances in those lines that we have here, here's a copy of my sheet here. This is my blank sheet. I have one I'm filling out at home. Here's the problem. If you decide you're going to feed some spiritual part of your life, which means there's some kind of spiritual practice that you're going to feed. So you're going to give time, effort, resources, attention to this. Well, something's going to have to give in your life. The problem is you can't go down here and make your physical life give. Means I'm going to completely quit eating so I can have more time to pray. I mean, that may work for a day maybe, but you will eventually die if you keep that up too long. So everything's got to be given in kind. So if you're going to feed something in your spiritual life, you're going to have to starve something in your spiritual life. If you're going to feed something in your relational life, you're going to have to starve something in your relational life. So somewhere something's got to give to make room for that. And you can't say rob from your personal life to give to your professional life. You can take it from a guy who tried that, does not work. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's the worksheet. The link is there in the live chat. Click over and download that, and you can print it off or whatever you need to do. And we're going to take a look at it here and here tonight. So, hey, Crystal and Bill, how you doing? Glad you guys came out tonight. So, all right. Hey, we got 33 people logged in. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you all. If I said hi to everybody, hey, Nicole, hope Bronson gets to feeling better. Sounds like he went 12 rounds in a prize fight and didn't come out on the upper end of that. Bronson fell and broke his arm and got a concussion and hurt his teeth and all kind of stuff. So, Nikki, I hope her son Bronson's feeling better here soon. So, I get everybody. All right. If I need to shout out anybody else, put in the chat room right now. Say, please shout out to me because you haven't done it yet. So if I missed you, put that in there because now it's on you if I didn't say something to you. All right, cool. All right. So one of the very first thing, we're in chapter 3.6 for any of you who happen to be following along. In talking about this, one of the things he opens the chapter with is he opens the chapter with journaling. And you all know I am a journaler and have been for years. Now, I do have to admit, hey, Janine Goodwin, I'm shouting you out. Appreciate you being here. And tell Brad I appreciated his phone call today. Sorry the trip to Guatemala didn't work out, but glad to have you here. And tell Brad I'm going to get with him about some projects here at church he and I talked about. So, all right, journaling. As you all know, and because I've mentioned it enough times that you should know, I am a journaler, have been for years. Now, I have never had a journal like the one he describes in this chapter, which I think would be my next journal. I may have to look into something like this. The way it was laid out is it was the journal that he happened to be using was a 5-year journal. And what it had was 365 pages. So every March the 4th or every, April 13th, he would write a journal entry of a couple of lines every April the 13th for 5 years. So what you do on January 1st, you start at the beginning, right across all the top till you get to December 31st. And then you go back to January 1st of the next year. And you can look and see, well, what did I do? What was I writing about? What was going on in my life last year at this time? That's a really cool way to journal. I've never done it that way. My journals are generally straightforward. But that's the way he was doing it. I think it'd be a cool way to do it. Now the reason he gives that example is he talks about how surprised he was in journaling in that particular way, where you can compare what you're doing from 2017 to 2018 to 2019, 2020. He began over the period of the years he and his wife were doing this, that he eventually found out he was writing a bunch of the same stuff. He was doing a lot of the same things. He was still worried about a lot of the same. A lot of his prayers were the same, and he was able to compare. He's like, gosh, I was dealing with this last year and it's still here and I never got anywhere. And he says from that experience, oh, Gene, I bet that is absolutely fascinating. They say they have one from Daryl's mom that she kept from 1936 and 1940. I bet that is fascinating. And hey, okay, so Toby likes it. Angie likes it. Perhaps we need to invest in some journals. Sounds like something somebody maybe need to be writing on this paper, but we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I think that was a fascinating way to do it. Now, from that experience, because I love journaling, and I'll tell you why I use journaling. I do occasionally flip back to the old journals and read, and it just like walking back through my life a little bit, through trials and different times in my life. So it's interesting to go back and read those. But with the reason I journal though is, to me it's a focus thing. If I'm writing, I have to be right here in writing. I can't be going, I'm writing and then I'm thinking, I need to make this phone call and I need to get through to this, and I need to make sure today I get the sermon written, and I need to get an article for the newspaper, and I need to prep dangerous prayers, and I need to call in to pray for city council, and I gotta make sure I'm here at 8:00, and I'm not doing any of that. If I want to think about that, if I want to pray for writing a sermon, or if I want to pray to prep dangerous prayers, I can do that with my pencil. But I'm not doing all of them at once. Any of you who know me at all, you know that Pastor Tim's kryptonite is I cannot do more than one thing at a time. I do one thing at a time. And that has frustrated coworkers I've had through the years, people who have to deal with me. I know Nikki, who used to be my office manager, and Michelle, who used to work for me, often wanted to choke me because Pastor Tim does one thing at a time. And if I got too many things, I had to say, nope, we're not doing none of that stuff. I got to do this first. And they will, and I know that about myself. So what I want to do is, Matt, don't get me started on Cheez-Its. That's just cruel, dude. Dude, that is cruel. That is harsh. The Cheez-Its things. Because we know we all love Cheez-Its. That's from the men's group. That's a great story I have to share with you sometime. And I see Nikki giving me an amen here, so she knows about this one thing at a time thing. So, yes, she knows she can mouth off to me because she don't work for me no more yet. But so the idea is I use journaling as a focus thing because multitasking is way overrated. Beth Reedy, you are correct. And so let me scroll up here. Okay, so Randy Ryan wants to get better at journaling. Look, Randy, I can say it's not hard, even though it is hard. Just buy a notebook and start writing. That's how I started. And I do not chew gum and run, Cool Hand Luke, because if I did, I would have facial scars. So I don't do that. Janine Goodwin says she hates journalism. She'd rather work mathematical problems. Janine, I know you well enough to find out that does not surprise me to learn that. Jessica says, I hope someone reads the 5 I have. They'll see how I've grown over the last 5 years. Yep, and that's a great way to do it. And because that's where things get personal. Gene Smith, you are preaching the gospel here, sister, and that is exactly right. People who think they're multitasking are actually just doing too many things at once and have no idea what they're doing. Truth. Hashtag truth on that one. And so that's why I use journaling to stop me from doing that exact thing about trying to do too many things at once. It's a great, for me, it's always been a great focus thing. And I think that's the way Craig was using it too, because that's what it would be. And when 2 or 3 years into that, and he realizes on April the 13th for 3 consecutive years, he's been dealing with the same dang thing. That might be time to go on to something else. And he says in here, that was his motivation to begin this journey toward what we're talking about tonight, and that is dangerous prayers. And he wanted to pray those dangerous prayers because he got tired of praying the same prayers all the time. And by pushing himself outside of his comfort zone, he was able to experience a little bit of that. So, all right, I think I've covered my first couple of notes here. So what he ended up deciding, he says in here, and this is something I want to take a few minutes with you guys here tonight, is I'm at the end. There's a paragraph that starts with, during one of my dangerous prayers of submission. It's that paragraph. It's the last sentence in that paragraph. He says, every day, no matter what, at least one faith-filled act. So he prayed for the chance every day, no matter what, and it's maybe something small, but he wanted to do one faith-filled act. All right. For those of you who have any kind of a concept for this list that I made you, how does that relate to this? How does one small faith-filled act relate to feeding something in your life and starving something in your life? How can one faith-filled act, regardless of size, how can that help feed either feeding one part of your life or starving some part of your life? How can the prayer to motivate you to a faith-filled act, how can that prayer lead you to feeding something in your life that God wants fed or starving in your life something that he does not want there? This is where the lag always gets me, the lag in the chat. So, how does doing one faith-filled act, praying for God every day, I want to do one faith-filled act. How does that relate to God saying, "Okay, Cool Hand Luke, I would like for you to feed this area of your life," or "Cool Hand Luke, I would like you to starve this area of your life"? How does praying for God to give you something faithful to do, how might that result in emphasizing something or de-emphasizing something? Okay. Trina says reading the Bible every day. That's certainly a faithful act, I think, by any way you would define it. And you're talking about maybe the spiritual component of your life, perhaps organizational, depending on how you're going to use that. But that would help you to focus on others, not yourself. Again, in a broader sense, Gene, that's true. It's about looking, more communal at things. Maybe there's some communal things that need to be emphasized. There's some communal things that need to be de-emphasized in order to give yourself time. I got to tell you, I think the reason that this whole starving and feeding concept that he talked about, I think the reason that hit me so hard was because we have been living that for a month now. I look at everything and look, and I'm not saying, oh, y'all were screwing this up. No, I was just as guilty as anyone else about how many people were just out there chasing the wind all over the place, chasing the wind, having, their lives go 150,000 different directions and going nowhere. I think about all the people I watch doing that, dragging their kids to endless sports practices and pushing themselves to get to 100 different things and running themselves ragged. And I mean, and now we're in a place where all of a sudden all that stuff is gone, especially the little God of sports, which is a big problem for a lot of families. To see that cog taken out of the wheel again, and I'm not saying, look, I played sports growing up, but this kind of life consuming nature of it anymore. I feel like we've been forced to give a lot of that stuff up, and so I feel like I know I've had conversations with a number of you who may even be here tonight. Well, did God cause COVID-19? I don't know that God caused it. However, I do think God is using it. That I do believe. And I think God is using it in a very clear way to help us all say or kind of see what life could be without all the clutter, because all the clutter has now been government mandated closed. And this time for slowing down, talk what you want about whether or not the government even has the authority to close things down. I'm not sure the government has the authority to do that. But that's what's happened, and that's where we are. So now instead of running ragged, now we get a chance to really go back and say, gosh, did I really need all that? Did I really need all those things? Or could that time have been better spent investing in my kids or investing in my spouse or investing in my friends or investing in my church or investing in my community? And again, please hear me. I'm not saying all that stuff is bad. I'm just saying it was too much in some ways and not enough in others. We were starving. We were feeding some areas of life to the point that it was gluttonous, and we were starving other areas of life to the point it was emaciated. And so I think that this has helped us see, by removing a lot of that stuff, the important things in life need to get fed, and a lot of important things, may not be happening right now, but that's given us time to evaluate what we think is important. And okay, let me get into the chat room here. Teresa says that we be praying for God to use us in His will and not our own. That's a good refocus moment. Doing God's will, Kim, it's always a great idea, especially when talking about doing those small acts of faithfulness. Cheryl agrees with Gene, and it changes our focus. And it does change our focus. Again, purpose of this, changing focus, helping us go a different direction. Jess Skinner agrees with me. I want you all to write that down, that Jessica said that I was right about something. Man, I feel like I may have arrived somewhere in my life just now. So thank you for that, Jess. Cheryl, anytime you're serving him, it gives us a chance to listen to other possibilities. Yes, that's well said. A lot of times, removing distraction and focusing gives us a chance to listen to other possibilities that we may not have considered before. Teresa, this has been answered prayer for me from 25 years ago. I'm assuming you mean COVID-19 there. Jess, yeah, we all miss Ed. I miss Ed too. Always called it chasing your tail. Man, how many people we've been watching do that? How many times have we spent doing that? Slowing down allows time for relationships and creativity. Yes, it does, Gene. And I think that we lost some of that by being too busy. D. Hertenstein thinks Jess wants a raise. That was exactly what I thought when that happened, D, actually. And Kohan Luke is praying for God to search my weaknesses and strengths and bring them to the forefront. Yes, because, there may be some weaknesses we need to feed. However, there may also be some weaknesses in life that we need to put over here, and not focus on them. Why not play to your strengths? And I'm not saying, that God won't say, you're not good at this, you need to work on it. Of course that's going to happen. But I am also, for me personally, my handwriting is atrocious. I sometimes write things and I don't even know what it says. Always has been. I never got a good grade in penmanship in school. Teachers hated me. The greatest thing that ever happened to me was word processing. So I could spend a lot of time trying to improve my handwriting, or I could just text you all so you can read my hillbilly English on the phone and not have to worry about it. Why should I waste time working on handwriting when I'll just email you anyways? So sometimes, we think, well, I want to improve in this way. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't need to improve in that way. Maybe you need to play to your strengths. Because I'll tell you, the more time you spend in your strengths, the happier you're going to be. So, all right, Matt Clements, I think, agrees with D about Jess wanting a raise. I can see that. Angie says it's giving me time to reflect on what God wants of me. I hope and pray that lots of people have that exact experience, Angie, because I think that's very important. And very good. So, and Gene agrees with you, and I do too. So that's what can happen when we allow God the opportunity to say, all right, every day I'm gonna push myself. I'm going to take the opportunity to feed something. I'm going to take the opportunity to starve something. Doesn't mean you have to hit all 14, the 7 feeds and the 7 starves all every single day. But over time, you should be rotating around, and you should be able to get in one of those every day. I'm going to, feed this impulse, or I'm going to feed this strength, or I'm going to feed this item that God asked me to put on the list, or I'm going to starve it. And Gene, that's absolutely true. Yeah. You know how sometimes they'll take famous people and they'll publish your journals? Yeah, don't ever think you're going to read mine, because you're not. Mine were password protected before there were passwords around. So, all right, cool. Now, one of the things that Craig says that happened to him when he started praying for God to give him the strength to take that, one faith-filled act every day, is he found Angie should know about the handwriting thing. That you got that right. And what he found, and this is in the next paragraph, he says, that simple challenge changed the way I live. The simple challenge of praying for one faithful act every day. It changed the way that he lived. And I love this sentence. And I read this sentence over a couple times. I love the sound of this. And I want to put this to you. Reflect on this sentence. Let's talk about this sentence for just a second. This is how Craig changed. He said, instead of existing passively, I started living aggressively. That's how he described what's happened in his life. By praying for God for one faith-filled act every day, instead of living passively, or instead of existing passively, he started living aggressively. Somebody reflect on that. You know, how would that kind of approach to life, how would that change your life? How would the difference between existing passively and living aggressively, how would that change? How would that change your life? Yeah, Trina, clearly, like any time of challenge would be, but particularly this one, it's given us a chance to reevaluate priorities, which is exactly the conversation we're having around dangerous prayers. And oh, D, you picked out that sentence too, did you? Yeah, I thought that was a great statement. We have too many people who are existing passively. I mean, let's just be honest. There's lots of people out there existing passively. We need to allow God to fill our lives to the point that we're going to live aggressively, and that's a great that's a great change. Yeah, be a participant instead of an observer, Gene. That's right. Instead of being a fan up in the nosebleed section, get out on the field. Breath says, bring your life some meaning. Certainly agree. Quinn Luke says, taking control of your life, not being fearful. And because, I mean, one thing that aggression doesn't really do well is be fearful. And that has given a lot of opportunity. Yeah, Teresa also goes with the participant thing. I would agree with that. Janine says makes her wish she'd retired sooner because she's exhausted. I'm sure in your job, I'm sure that's the case. Matt Clements, living aggressively helps keep us from becoming complacent. Amen, bro. And there are too many people because complacency leads to existing passively. And I mean, let's be honest, existing passively is boring. There's so much life out there to get to. And I know that's weird to say now when it's like illegal to go anywhere, but there's a lot of opportunity out there that we shouldn't be afraid to embrace. And Nikki says, doing instead of sitting back. Again, sitting back, the very definition of existing passively. Jack and Cheryl say, instead of just letting life happen, go and actively live it. Instead of watching it on a screen, which might be mildly hypocritical for me to say right now. But I think y'all know what I'm talking about. It's about being able to, take a chance. And by taking a chance, it implies the possibility of failure. And it's just to go out and give life a little color, life a little meaning by allowing some faithfulness to lead you into living aggressively. Sue says, to be able to meet the new goal, he has to actively look for his faithful act and not wait for it to come to him. Yes. I mean, that's the very nature of aggression, is to go out and find it. And if you're going to be passive and expect it to roll into your lap, I'm not going to say it never happens, but that's the exception, not the rule. And we have too many people who are out there running on treadmills, hoping that life will roll to them. And that just doesn't happen. And it's not the years in your life, it's the life in your years. I would expect the person at the Council on Aging to say something like that, Trina, but that's very true. Randy, in a moment of a great sincerity here, says, I am passive in my life and I encourage aggression in others. I know, not good. Randy, learn your lesson. There it is. D says it takes a boldness, but a heart of compassion to not come across too strong to live aggressively. It takes a boldness, but a heart of compassion to come across too strong to live aggressively, to not come across too strong to live aggressively. It takes boldness, but a heart of compassion to not come across too strong to live aggressively. Yeah, I agree with that, D, but I also see that as a hindrance. We spend a lot of what existing passively, a lot of what that desire comes from is we're concerned about what other people will think of us. And yeah, I guess there's always some of that in there, but we can also let a lot of life passes by if we, let others criticism of us, because look, people can criticize everything, to allow that to stop us from being who we are. Kim says you wouldn't be sitting back and letting life pass you by. It's what I just said. You'd be proactive. Proactive is a great way to live life because you're not going to let things pass you by. Sherry agrees with Trina. That's right. Not number of years in your life, but life in your years. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of old people out there who are in their 20s based on how they live their life. That's true. Aggressively is the same as having purpose. That's true. It's impossible to be aggressive unless you have a purpose. Now, that purpose could be bad and your aggression could be wrong, but that's true. Goals are what give us aggression. And I know we all think that that's, toxic masculinity and it's all evil and bad and horrible and all this stuff. It's not. Not if it's godly, not if it's peace loving, not if it's community protecting, not if it's family embracing. It's not. It's how God designed all of us, particularly men. I'm going to be honest with you on that one. But we've all been designed with a purpose. And he's given us a fierceness to go after that purpose. And sometimes when we lose that fierceness, we also lose the goal. And God's not interested in that. So Cool Hand Luke says, faith helped me live this path, actively search for his will. Again, motivation is what gets us out there. And Matt says, you can be content yet still move aggressively toward your faith. Yeah, absolutely you can be. There is a contentment in that. It's only when the contentment is based on comfort, Matt, that's a problem. I know that's exactly what you're saying. It's when the comfort makes us contented, and we don't want to get bumped out of that space. That's when it becomes a problem, because that's when you're existing passively just to make sure you never experience discomfort. If being comfortable is your aggression, that's a problem. Is there such a thing as living too aggressively? D asks. Of course there is, but it probably depends on what you're aggressive about. If it's not a godly purpose, if it's not a community building purpose, if it's not a safe purpose, if it's all about selfish interests, it's all about me ending up on top, me having all the money, me having all the power, me having all the stuff. If that's what the aggression is about making sure you're the winner in every situation, then yes, that can be bad. Because that is aggression toward a negative goal. That's an aggression toward a goal that should be written on this side of the page. That's aggression toward a goal we should be starving. However, if God gives you the goal, then aggression is always good. Can it be too much? You ever read the Apostle Paul? He's probably one of the most aggressive people on the face of the earth. He didn't take no for an answer, but they couldn't break that man if they tried. I'm sure there were plenty of his critics who thought Paul was too aggressive. But the only reason that we're having this conversation today, and we have books in our Bible called Corinthians and Thessalonians, the only reason that we have that is because Paul was aggressive toward a goal that Jesus set before him. So, am I saying we should run over people and not care about people's feelings because we have a goal? No, I'm not saying that. That could be too much. But at the same time, Paul was willing to run over people and not care about people and route to his goal. He often wrote in his letters, one of the letters to Timothy, I believe it was, he talks about Alexander the ironworker. What does he say to do about Alexander the ironworker? Cut that man off. He's nothing but a problem. Let him go. Paul didn't care. So Paul was very dedicated to what he was doing. And so I don't know if there's a yes no answer to that question, D, because I think it depends on where your motivation comes from. I consider myself to be an incredibly aggressive person. To go out and go after things and try to make a difference. And Wayne Street has been very gracious to me in that. I've served other churches that absolutely hated it. We would have meetings about how much they have to rein me in because I'm out there pushing too hard on things and trying to do too much and being involved in too many things in the community. I've sat in many a board meeting where I was told I was to quit doing things because it was bringing people into the church and stuff. I mean, I've been there. I've been in those conversations. Luckily, Wayne Street puts up with my aggression. And that's that's just different ways of dealing with things. Cheryl D, as a retired teacher, I think of helicopter parents and parents. I just read an article about this. Maybe you read the same one, Cheryl, about they were talking about the difference between helicopter parents and lawnmower parents. Um, Helicopter parents being the parents that hover around their kids to make sure nothing bad ever happens to them ever. Then you got lawnmower parents who, basically literally mow down anything in their child's path, including other children, to get the child to the goal. Both of those are bad. Don't do either one of those. If any of you parents are willing to take advice from a non-parent, this one says don't do that ever. Let your kids learn. Make them work for things. That's how it's supposed to work. That's how they're going to learn what God gifted them to do, and learn to be able to defend themselves and stuff like that. I think that's great. So, all right. Leave it to Cool Hand Luke to say it better than I did. Congratulations, my boy. Bad aggression is kick the door in to preach to me. Sorry about the door, Luke. Good aggression, walking in the parade, collecting school supplies with a smile on your face. There it is. And that's a dangerous topic, Tim. The parenting thing. All the parents are like, Tim Bear, shut up. We don't want to hear from him about that. And that's probably good. So, all right. Now, Craig goes on to give a couple of a couple of examples here of different things that he experiences that he had about when he was speaking. One of them he's talking about, there was a man who was an entrepreneur, very good at starting things, very good at organizing things and making things function. And he says he suddenly had a sense that Craig suddenly had a sense that this other gentleman he was talking, or I don't know if it was a man or a woman, but whoever he was talking to, that they may need to get in the church. And okay, it was a man he was speaking to, and Craig said, "You ever thought about using your talents for God?" And the guy says, "Gosh, I was just talking about that last night." So the phrase I want to pick out of this is when he says, "I suddenly had a sense." I suddenly had a sense of something, and that sense felt like it was from God. The question is, you ever experienced that? I suddenly had a sense that we were onto something. I suddenly had a sense I needed to do something. I suddenly had a sense I needed to say something. He talked about, I think it was a little later, but he talks about how they saw a woman in the store with a couple kids, and she was scraping money together, and he suddenly had a sense that he needed to help her. So he anonymously gave her some money to get through. Have you ever had a sense of something? I always remember what Bart said. If your house is burning, would you want someone to politely knock or pound on it and tell you your house was burning? Karl Barth was somebody who had a lot. I'm assuming that's who you're talking about. He had a lot to say. And that's what I've always said, friends. I mean, am I allowed to use a superhero analogy? When they put the bat signal up in the sky, do they want Batman to come and talk the criminal down? No. They want Batman to come and put the guy in a hurt locker and then throw him in jail to aggressively deal with the situation. And, there's a great line from the movie Demolition Man, which is just a cheesy 90s action flick starring Sylvester Stallone. But there's a fantastic line in there. Wesley Snipes is the villain. And he's crazy, obviously, as all villains in those 90s cheesy movies were. But there's a great line where Sylvester Stallone's about ready to jump in the middle of this war zone and go take down Simon Phoenix, who was Wesley Snipes as the bad guy. And he has this line that I've always remembered. Before he jumps out of this helicopter into the middle of this war going on in this city, he says, "You got to send a maniac to stop one." I'm not going to lie. There are many times that I felt like the maniac that got sent into a situation because sometimes when things are really bad, you need somebody up to the challenge, shall we say. And, when that's why I have been relentless in so many things in my career, is because I watch the devil who don't play fair. I mean, the devil's willing to kill children and starve people and make people lose their jobs and threaten families and destroy marriages. And sometimes if that's what the enemy's doing, you got to send a maniac to stop that. And I just feel like sometimes God could use a few more maniacs. And you can quote me on that, I guess. But I feel like this living aggressively idea comes from the same idea. It's about how are we going to go forward and address somebody, address a situation, because when people are getting hurt, something's got to be done. And I feel like and I'm not trying to equate the two, but I feel like all the work that we put in to have Sunday morning services on YouTube, we could just as easily have nothing. But there's a lot of people who work really hard to make sure those things happen. And because we think it's important. And yes, there are some maniac tendencies in that, but we have decided that going without anything is not acceptable to us. Is it perfect? Clearly not. We would much rather be here in this building together. But that option was taken away. And I'm never going to forget this for the rest of my life. The very first Sunday that we were not able to have services for quarantine, I literally found out that was going to happen Thursday night during band practice. I was here for band practice. The band was running through stuff, preparing for Sunday. I got a buzz on my phone, and it was an order from our bishop that churches were to be closed on Sunday. By the time we ended practice that night, the band had already recorded stuff and had a plan to have a service on Sunday online. That's how fast it happened. We taped the sermon. We had some music put together. Josh pieced together some old stuff. Daryl came over and played a few things, so we would have some stuff. We had a service on Sunday online with no preparation to do that in an hour. Now, at least the plan was there. It took more than an hour to get everything together. But we decided that first Sunday, no way were we going to be without it. It was not going to happen. And sometimes it takes that kind of commitment to do that. And thank God for the band, and thank God for Daryl and Gene, who have been so just ridiculously gracious in coming together to provide those things. So we have had both First Light and Awaken. We have had no interruption. We went straight to online in an instant because no one was willing to accept having nothing. And you're right, Kuhan Luke, that's being aggressive. And like I said, we could have just easily had nothing that first week. Within 4 days or 5 days, this study started. And you all were so wonderful to come together, and you all have worked so hard to learn how to use YouTube, and you've worked so hard to learn how to use your computer and use your phones. And I've had conversations with people about how to do this. I didn't know how to do it either. I was like, we're going to do this. Okay. Because we said we will not accept having nothing. And the only reason we have this, and the only reason we have Sunday morning right now, is because a whole bunch of people said we will not accept having nothing. That's living aggressively. Because we had one night when my camera was backwards. I had to do the whole thing with my computer turned around, but we decided we would not accept having nothing. And I'm not saying it's me. I'm saying it's us. And it's more you, because you don't have to click here. You don't have to be here right now. And don't any of you leave because I said that. But this is us being aggressive together. And thank God, because I look forward to this. I know many of you have told me how much you look forward to this, but you don't look forward to it as much as I do. All day I'm thinking about this and getting ready for this. And I enjoy sort of having this time with you. Everybody likes to say, "Hey, I'll see you tonight." And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. You'll see me tonight. That's, so because I don't see any of you. I see me too, which I've sort of gotten used to over the time of doing this. But anyways, friends, that's just an example of living aggressively. It's saying, nope. All right, you've given us the limitations. The parameters have been set. We can't be in the building, but we won't accept having nothing. We're going to have something. And that first week we had something. And if you've been watching on Sunday mornings, every week it's gotten better. And we're getting ready to start a new sermon series on Sunday going on. Regardless, we're starting a new sermon series on Ruth on Sunday morning because we're not giving up. We will continue doing that until we feel it's time for us to get back together. That's living aggressively. And thank you to all of you who've been willing to walk this journey with us. So, all right. Is there anything else here I need to get to, or can we jump to the chapter here? Did I say sort of, Candy? What did I say sort of about? What did I miss? What did I say sort of about? Oh, if you want to thank anybody for our worship services, thank Daryl and Josh. They're the ones who deserve all the praise on that one. All right, let's skip over. I got one more point I want to make, and then we're going to jump onto the worksheet for just a couple minutes and answer questions. I'm going to tell you, while I'm going through this, we're going to multitask because you all know how good at that I am. I'm going to go over this last point I want to make. Please ask me questions about this, okay? Because this is where we're going next, and I know there's a lag. So get those questions in the chat room so I can answer them and continue clarifying kind of how we want this to work, because I really want this to be a tool for you to be able to work through some of your dangerous prayers. So if you have questions about this, any questions at all, no dumb questions, I promise I won't make fun of any of them. Jump in there and ask a question and let me answer it, because I want this to work for you. And go ahead and put the questions in there, even though even though I'm here. And wait, you're laughing at Janine. Joyce, Janine, have you noticed we've been getting more? Yes, Janine, I have noticed that. You guys are getting aggressive. You ain't letting me get away with anything. And I wouldn't have it any other way. If you guys let me get off easy on this, I'd be mad at you. So, all right. Here's the last sentence that I want to deal with in the book here. The sentence that says, doing these small things, living aggressively, allowing God to work in our lives for these dangerous prayers. Doing that, he says, is simply a matter of being, count these off with me, willing, open, attuned to God, and risking more. 4 points. How many of us can honestly say that if we don't put forth the effort to do so, and we aren't paying attention, and we sort of let ourselves kind of run whichever way we want to run, how many of us find that our default setting, what we go back to if we're not living aggressively, if we decide to exist passively, how many of us find that our default setting is that we're willing, open, attuned to God, and taking risks? Can any of us honestly say those are 4 things that we would naturally do without thinking? I don't think so. I think most of us, look, I speak for me. I know that I would gravitate toward being comfortable. I could be at home right now playing Mario Brothers on my Wii U right now. Or I could be at home with a tub of ice cream and doing nothing. If I defaulted, that's where I'd be. We would have been 4 Sunday mornings with no services, at least not services that I had anything to do with. If I didn't want to be aggressive, if I let myself default to my default setting, because that's easy. But I don't, thankfully there were enough people around me when this became a problem that when I said we need to go forward, they were 1 step ahead of me and they were already running off to make something happen. So I think most of us, if we're honest, and I see Randy's being honest here, that's not our default setting. Our default setting is not to be willing, because remember willing, how much we talked about that word? Willing is what God's looking for, not qualified, not necessarily talented. He's looking for willing. He can work with willing. And because willing implies listening. And see, Randy, the boys are eating ice cream and playing Wii right now. Could very well be what I was doing. And so Cool Hand Luke says, I need a leader and active role model in my life. I'd make a great Robin. Yeah, Cool Hand Luke, I think you would make a great Robin. And as soon as as soon as I'm ready to draft a sidekick, you'll be the first guy I call. So, all right. Yes, we default to our comfort zones. And our comfort zones don't do this kind of stuff. Our comfort zones don't go learn YouTube. And I'm not just talking about me. I'm talking about all y'all who are here. Comfort zones don't learn how to do something we didn't know how to do before. And all of you who are watching my goofy face on your screen right now, you wouldn't be doing that if you're going to default to your comfort zone. Because I am sure, beyond any shadow of a doubt, you could be watching something far more entertaining on this very same screen than this. I know that. But the fact that you're willing to step out and see what the good Lord might be doing through this maniac pastor that you have, I appreciate that, for one thing. But my hope is that this Holy Spirit is connecting with you during this time, especially since our topic here is dangerous prayers and how God can push us out of our comfort zone, how God can make us stop existing passively and start living aggressively. Because I really feel like, me included, could use more of that. And I think that God's kingdom could use more of that. And I think that God's church with a capital C could use more of that. And I know for a fact that our world could use more of that. More of God's people living aggressively rather than existing passively. And all right, I think that brings us to the end of the chapter. All right. I see no questions about the worksheet showing up in the chat line. I'm hoping that means because all of you understand it. Let me give the 30-second explanation of it again. Everybody pull it out, take a look at it. And okay, so John Craner helped Janine, guided her into Teaching Financial Peace, which is a great Dave Ramsey course, by the way. He pushed to help me find something, pray for something to do in the church. And given how many people struggle with finances, Janine, I can't even begin to imagine how many people you helped through that. Okay, what if we have one or two areas that are completely overfilled in the Fed that shouldn't be? Can we split time with the other things that need filled that are in a different area? Okay, there's a question. What if we have one or two areas that are completely overfilled in the Fed? Okay, Teresa, if I understand your question correctly, you're asking me if, and I'm pulling this example out. Teresa didn't tell me any specifics, but suppose, say, your relational category is way overfilled. Can I take away from spiritual to make room? The answer is no. That's the purpose of the sheet. And thank you for asking that question. I think this is where a lot of people were confused. Here's what I want you to see. Let me give this example. Suppose you decide that you want to be more communal. You want to serve in the community more. And you're thinking, maybe I'm going to join Rotary. Maybe I'm going to, go down and find out what I can do through city council. Maybe I'm going to get on some hospital auxiliary. Or I'm going to organize some community event, something in the park. I'm going to do something through Wayne Street. We do a lot of communal stuff here. But you look at your schedule and you say, well, it's really full. So I'm going to list a couple of things here, but I don't really have room. So maybe on this side, I can take from another area. And you know what would give me a lot more time to serve in the community? If I didn't have a spouse. So I'm going to get divorced and ruin this area. I'm going to put my spouse here so I have more room to serve in the community. You know what we call that in layman's terms? Failure. That's what that is. Don't take from one area of life to feed into another. All right? Because the temptation is to say, I hate relationships anyways. Look at how much time I can make up there. And Teresa, that is an excellent question. Thank you for asking. It doesn't work that way. Okay? If you're worried about serving in your community, or you feel God is tugging on you on that one, then it's got to take away from a communal area of your life, because you only have so much time to put there. So if you say, I want to be a part of the Easter egg hunt, since we didn't have it this year. I want to be a part of organizing the Easter egg hunt for Wayne Street or the community Easter egg hunt, because that's what it was going to be. It was going to be down in the park. It was going to come up Spring Street down here, and it was going to end over here at the Lutheran Church. That was the original plan for the Easter egg hunt. And obviously, the coronavirus destroyed that. So, but suppose next year you come around and say, well, I would like to serve in the community by being a part of that. So maybe during that time, you're going to need to step back from something else. Maybe you're going to need to step off of maybe you're on, say, the BLT here at Wayne Street. Maybe you'll need to step back from that a month or two. Or maybe you're on, Your kids are part of a sports league, and maybe you're not going to be able to make all the practices during that season, or maybe you're going to have to miss a game or two. Okay, that's where the give and take has to come from. Now I realize it's not supporting your kids, so that may not be the best example, but that's what I'm saying. Maybe the community thing you were doing, you went out to dinner with friends, and maybe for a season you're going to have to miss some of those in order to serve in this other capacity. That's where the give has to happen. You can't say, well, I'm going to give up my devotional life so I can do this Easter egg hunt. That's defeating the purpose, because those are two separate areas of life. You can't say, I'm going to give up my exercise time that I take. I take a walk every day. Well, I'm going to dedicate that time to serving the community. It doesn't work that way, because what's going to happen is your physical health will begin to fail, and you're not going to be able to serve in capacity in the other area as well. Somebody tell me if I'm making sense here. That's why there are two lines on every category. You cannot neglect, because what will happen is if you decide I'm going to take from my my professional life, I'm going to rob from my professional life to feed my personal life. Well, you're going to end up getting fired if you do that. So that and because the idea is you need all 7 of these categories. So everything that you're going to starve, everything in my organizational life and my time management, I'm going to starve every area of my life there. I'm going to spend no time doing that so that I have time to dedicate to something else. Well, your life is going to be screwed up. It's going to be out of balance. If you don't have time management skills, let's be honest, it doesn't matter what else you try to do. It's never going to work. You need, I created this document, and in my head, and if you want to trust what goes on in this thing all the time, in my head, these are the 7 categories of life that you need. You need a spiritual life. You need a personal life. You need a relational life. You need a physical life. You need a professional life. You need an organizational life, which means time management. You got to make good use of your time. And you need a communal life. And you got to have all of them. Because if you start robbing from one to feed another, all you're doing is starving an entire category of your life. Okay? Excellent question, Teresa. Thank you for asking that. I hope I'm making sense. Jack, having retired for 2 careers now, I need some advice on how to fill out the professional section. Wow, that is a great question. The one I hadn't thought of yet. Ooh, that's a really good question I had not considered. No, Jack. I know you're retired. I know one of those careers you retired from as a teacher. my man, you're still a teacher. I watch you in the Sunday school classroom over there, and you got a bunch of students in there. You're still teaching. We may not be paying you for it anymore, outside of deep appreciation for Pastor Tim, which will get you nothing in life. But you're still teaching. Those professional skills are skills you're still using, and so what how are you going to develop yourself as a teacher? Maybe there's a book that you need to read, or maybe there's a book of the Bible that you need to study, or maybe there's something going on from here at church that you're going to need to be a part of so you can go teach your students in that class. True, we're not paying you to do that anymore. You're not doing that professionally as a profession, but you're still a teacher. And those are clearly, and Jack, look, I know you well enough to know that teacher, if anybody's ever been born to be a teacher, it's you. So I want you to, how are you going to develop those skills, even though you're not using them professionally anymore? That's how I'd answer that question. Tim Dickey says, we're wired with a survival instinct that whispers to us not to do dangerous and uncomfortable things. What if you need to feed a category because you're lacking in that area with nothing to start? What if you need to feed a category? The way I would answer that question is to say it's about, again, feeding and starving is about what gets priority. I don't think that there's any one area of these these categories that there's only one item in it. In the relationship category, Tim, I'll use you personally since you asked the question. I don't think that candy's the only relationship that you have. You have other friends, you have other family, you have other people that you know. So if there's a relationship that you want to work on, or a relationship that you want to give priority to, then there's another relationship that you're going to have to starve. And that may be somebody in your life that's a bad influence, or maybe it's a coworker who takes up too much space, or again, I don't know what it could be, but somewhere in there's a relationship that's taking up too much time, taking up too much effort, taking up too much focus. That will need to be diminished, because all these categories, there's more than one thing in them. Even a professional, I'm only getting paid at one job, but inside of my job, I have a lot of things. Maybe I want to, become a better public speaker. I mean, God knows I need a lot of work on that. Or I want to become better at using our multimedia equipment, which I've had a horrendous crash course on that the last month. I now know how to use the sound system, and I know editing software. I know YouTube, but stuff I didn't know a month ago. So there's a lot of professional development that I need inside of the job I'm getting paid to do. And I don't think that anybody took a half a second to consider, maybe we should hire Tim because we think he'd be good on YouTube. Because, first of all, I'm not so sure I am. But that wasn't even considered because no one ever thought that before. When you decided to accept me as your pastor, YouTube wasn't a consideration. Who knows? I mean, when the time comes that you're looking at another pastor, maybe you better think about YouTube. Get somebody with a nicer face to look at than this one. I don't know. But the idea is that these are things that we want to think about. And because I have a burning desire to do my job well. And by doing my job well, I don't mean make everyone at Wayne Street happy. I mean communicating the gospel. I know there's a whole bunch of expectation church folks have of pastors, but I know why I'm here. And when the time came that I couldn't meet anymore, it took me exactly an eighth of a second to decide, well, we're going to find out another way to do this, because we're either going to meet here or find something else now. And that's what happened. And so that's why I now am learning YouTube, and I'm a YouTube sensation. And we've gotten over 150 subscribers in the last month because it became necessary. So Trina's question, how can you starve spiritually? Yeah, this is the same question as last night. I think of all the 7 categories, the one that you all are struggling with is the spiritual one. And I get that, because that's the one I struggled with putting on this list. I knew when he was talking about the parameters of things we need to feed and things we need to starve. I felt like I understood that concept, and I think you all do too. And I knew that spiritual was going to have to be one of the dangerous prayers. But I, like all of you, I got that big word starved on that sheet, and the first one is spiritual. And I'm like, I don't know that I should write anything on that line. But here's the deal. Again, you cannot focus on your spiritual life at the expense of any of the other 6 categories. You can't do it, because all of them are important. So for me to say, okay, don't starve any of your spiritual life, well, something's going to have to starve in its place then. And do I want your relational life to starve to feed your spiritual life? No, I don't want that. So I know what you're looking for is an example. And that's it's hard for me to give examples, because my fear in giving you examples of these categories is that you all go, that's a great idea, and just write down what Tim said. I want this to be your thing. And I know that feels like I'm dodging the question. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just trying to not have any more influence over you than I have to. But having said that, let me see how this might work. Think of all the spiritual practices there are. Obviously, there's worship, there's prayer, there's reading, there's singing, spiritual music, and that kind of stuff. There's listening to sermons, whether they be from me or from a podcast or somebody. There's a lot of spiritual development things we can do. If you want to decide that you want to prioritize one of those, say you want to make worship be one of your priorities. You want to prioritize worship. You want to do it every single day. Now, instead of robbing time from your kids and you're off in your room and you got the door shut and you got your favorite song playing and you're lifting your hands toward heaven and you're really having a great experience and your kids are outside the door growing up without you, I say that's bad. As much as I love spiritual development, I love it more than any of you do, but I still think it's bad to neglect, relationships with people when you're developing your own spiritual life. That's a give that can't happen. So what I would say is maybe if worship is what you want to focus on, then one of the other categories is going to have to starve. So maybe you're not going to be able to read as much. I know you're not going to like this one, but maybe you're not going to be able to pray as much. And that may be okay. Because if your prayers right now are all about, here's the list of the 114 things I want you to do, God, then maybe less prayer would be good and more worship would be better. Instead of praying that God would heal every person on earth and rid us of COVID-19 and make world peace and start the economy and all this stuff, maybe instead of that, maybe you should replace those prayers with some time of worship. So maybe the starving is, I'm going to pray less prayers and petition, and the feed is, I'm going to worship more. I'm going to read more and actually pray less. I always feel like I should apologize for even saying that, but that's how that category would work. Friends, these are dangerous prayers. And what I'm saying to you is a dangerous thing. But to me, in my mind, that's how the starving on the spiritual end works. Does that clear anything up for any of you? Because I know this is one a lot of you have asked me about since I introduced this last night. Does that make sense to you? And while you speak to that, I'm going to go on to the next one. Gene says, not only do we need balance within each category, we need overall balance in all areas of our life. Balance, balance, balance. That's the word. Balance, balance, balance. Can't say it enough. Balance, balance, balance. Because if you try to compensate by starving an area to feed this one, that's not balance. That's out of balance, and that's a problem. So that's why balance is a huge problem. And Cheryl's sarcastic comment saying, so you think God wants us to live a balanced life? I'm going to go with yes on that one. So yes, absolutely. And I think that's what happens is if you write all your feed in one line and all your starve in another line, that's not balance. You're going to be way overweighted and way underweighted, and that's not good. So, okay. Janine says, Trina, doing way too much for your church that you become burnout spiritually. I mean, that could fit under the spiritual one, and it can also fit under the communal one or any of the others. But Janine, that's exactly right. Maybe in order to enjoy church, we need to, make some adjustments and things like that. Absolutely. So good. Sherry agrees with Gene. Good. Thank you, Tim, from Cheryl. You're welcome. I think that was for the professional explanation. Cheryl says, I agree, Janine. I remember when I was in so much, it was hard to keep up. Must admit, I slowed down on the church, but continued working too many hours. Yeah, I see that overworking is not balanced, even in the church. So does that move us to a new level of clarity on this? Y'all feel a little more confident with this now? Again, I don't expect you to have this whole sheet filled out by tomorrow night. I have zero expectation. In fact, I don't even want you to do that because I want this to take time because I want it to be something that will stick. But I really want you to be able to have some balance in your life. And in order to prioritize one thing, you have to deprioritize something else in that same category. Because if you make a different category, pay for extra prioritization in a different area of life, then that area of your life is going to tip. And tipping is bad. Okay? All right. I'd like to see, I got 34 of you in here right now. I'd like to see who all I got. Will everybody make a comment? Just write something in the comments. Can we bring our phone to our first service together for one last live stream service? Cool hand Luke with the question. We have to go a big negative on that one because if I have to do church like this, I'm afraid I'm gonna have a fit. So I don't know if I want to do that. So there's something. We got a me on there. All right. Yep. All right. Yep. Show me who's here. Hi, Margie and Dave. All right. Well, very good. Well, my friends, if you got another question, all right, Joyce and Nikki are still here. You got another question? Jump in here. You know how to get in touch with me. I'm not that hard to find. As always, I super duper appreciate you guys all being here and struggling through this. I just can't hardly believe how God has planned this whole thing for us to be doing this particular book at this particular time. I had it in my back pocket, ready to go so that we could launch this thing on a moment's notice. I had no idea this was going to happen. And I can't imagine a better book for us to read during this season than this one. So I have thoroughly enjoyed these conversations. I look forward to having further conversations about this sheet, and I really feel like I'm getting something out of this too. So I appreciate. Yeah, yes, Cheryl. I don't always make the best decisions, and I sometimes, open up an invitation to everybody jump on me. So, all right, the Dickies are still here. All right, very good. Oh, Trini, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. Randy, you are certainly welcome. Kim, appreciate the wink. And all right, everybody. Well, we've come to that time of the night when it looks like we're going to be signing off here shortly. Keep working on your sheets. Give it a little bit of time over the next 24 hour or 23 hours, so we're back together again. The plan is to be here tomorrow night. I hope you all will join us. Continue working on your worksheets and kind of see where that leads you. And I appreciate you struggling through this. On my agenda for tomorrow is to look at the book and decide if I want to use a night to go over the conclusion or not. I'm going to have to see if there's enough content there to do that, or if we're just going to jump into Joseph. So my plan is to make a decision on that tomorrow, and we'll talk about that tomorrow night. So we need T-shirts that say "Go wash your hands." Yeah, we do need that actually, and so yes, time. Yeah, time is of the essence. Hey, Joyce, you have blessed us by being here. Thank you so much. Appreciate you so much, and I miss you like crazy. Kuan Luke says, Jeopardy answer. The way Pastor Tim signs off every evening. The question is, what is wash your hands? Y'all know what to do. Now go do it. And I'll be back together here with you, the good Lord willing, tomorrow night. I love you all. And seriously, go wash the hands.